I'm Jezzrell Proo. I'm an illustrator and layout designer at The Pioneer.
Jezzrell is working during this pandemic outside of the Pioneer, and I wanted to ask her some questions on how and what's that like at the moment. So, how's it going, Jezzrell?
It's almost normal. It's like really odd because I work in the kitchen, so aside from like when I come out front and it being like really slow, after you've been there for a few hours, it kind of feels like a normal day, just really slow.
So, in all, what are your concerns working during the pandemic?
Biggest concerns like money and like safety because we the way the kitchen is set up for speed of service, the point is to get things out quickly. So when you're working on the line with other people, you're really close together, like almost shoulder to shoulder sometimes. So that definitely is not, the 6 feet um, recommendation that's going out right now. So that's the other thing that's really scary because, I don't know where my coworkers have been outside of work and who they've been in contact with and who the people in their homes have been in contact with. And so that's a little bit nerve-wracking to think like I could go to work one day and come home and feel perfectly fine and a couple weeks later find out I've like infected my whole family.
Is there anyone in your family that will be a high risk if you were to be infected?
Um, I'm my mom for sure, but she also works with me, so she's really concerned. And she watches my daughter, and my daughter's only 2 years old, like gonna be 2 years old. And I know they say like, oh, it doesn't really affect kids that much, but I'm like not willing to take the risk of her getting seriously ill. But I feel like I'm kind of in a position where I don't have a choice because I have bills to pay. So, and my job is being classified as essential. So I have to show up for work. We have to stay open.
So, what is your job doing? Like, what are the steps are they taking to keep you guys safe, essentially?
So we shut down the dine-in area. So only the drive-through is open and like curbside pickup only. So no one's allowed inside except for the people that work there. We do have people that are standing in the drive-through still and taking orders to keep things moving quickly, um, which is kind of odd because initially they said we wouldn't have people in the drive-through to avoid that contact. And then they put a cone out the window to keep the person in the window 6 feet from the person in the car. However, we have a person that stands in the middle outside of the window between the person in the car and the person in the window to pass things back and forth. So I'm not really sure how that works, but I mean, that's there. And then, of course, keeping gloves on. Front of house, people are wearing gloves a lot more. Everyone's washing their hands more often. Surfaces are being wiped down more often. Just extra cleanliness, basically.
Worst case scenario, say they consider your job not essential anymore. What would your reality be then?
The plan given to us is that we would have to apply for unemployment because our owner wouldn't be paying us our wages at that point anymore, which is concerning for me because I have been through the unemployment process and I know that it takes a minute to get approved and um that waiting period, like we're not going to be getting paid, so that could be potentially a whole week, 2 weeks, depending on how long they take to approve you with no pay. That could potentially be an entire paycheck gone. And you still have bills to pay. Those aren't being put on hold. So that's a concern. And then unemployment's not your full wages, it's only a percentage. So that's another concern. And then I was told we can't use our sick time unless we're actually, sick. So it's kind of like there is an option, but it's not necessarily the best or the favorite option.
Another question for you would be, what do you want other people to know? Like, if you had to say anything else to people, what would you want them to know?
I don't know, I'm kind of torn because I guess on the one hand, since we are, open and we are considered essential, it would be better to have more business so that I have more opportunity for hours. My hours been almost cut in half. So if I'm gonna show up, you might as well be there. Um, and also just like be kind to people when you show up. Like I know it can be scary to be like out and about with people, but we are human beings, so you know, be
Hmm.
kind.
So, does Jay Inslee recently like waived rent for about a month, and then he waived evictions for about 90 days, and he double check on that. But how does that help you, or does that even affect you at all?
I don't really think it'll affect me at this point. Um, and I mean, if you're, hmm, I mean, I guess if you're working and you're able to make your rent, that's great. If you can't, then yeah, that helps. But personally, I'm like 1 month, that's 1 month. I mean, yeah, that keeps money in my pocket, I guess. But what about the next month and the month after that? And if I lose my job after, then what?
That's a good point because it's almost like preparing, like because he also waived eviction, so in that sense, it's almost like preparing for the person not to be able to pay for the next couple months anyway. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
We pay rent to my in-laws, so I don't think they would evict us. But then there's the whole issue of, basically since we pay rent to them and they own the house, that's mortgage for
Mm,
them. So if they default on that, that's a whole nother issue for them.
true. So it's like a lasting domino effect, essentially.
Yeah. So it's like we have to make sure that we're paying so that we can stay here and also so that they don't get in trouble.
What more do you think the government should do for like workers or just people during this pandemic in general?
I've been hearing a lot about like just shut everything down, except for the absolute essentials like groceries, gas, and like healthcare.
Hmm.
And that should, slow everything down or wipe this out. I'm not a medical professional, so I don't know. That would be a good hope. But yeah, I would prefer it if we could just put things on pause. So I think the biggest thing people are concerned about is their financials. Like everyone's worried about not being able to pay their bills or not being able to, afford their groceries and that's another issue with things being bought out and stuff. So I feel like if people knew they didn't have to worry about losing their job or they didn't have to worry about if they didn't have hours or their place of work shut down, that they're going to lose their house or their apartment, they could be like, yeah, I'm on pause until, everybody's on pause until we get this figured out. I think it would be fair. I like the idea of the stipend that they're talking about sending out. But again, it's kind of like how helpful is that going to be? How long is that going to last? Are people going to properly use it? Or is it just going to be like you send it out and some people use it the way it's meant to be and some people don't? It's kind of uncontrollable. And people are still having to go to work, so they're still putting their health at risk in order to pay those bills, which means you still potentially have people out there spreading it.
Do you personally feel like our government was prepared for this situation?
No, I don't. I don't think they took it seriously initially. I think not just our government, but I think a lot of like the nation in general wasn't taking it seriously because it wasn't happening to us at the time. So we didn't see it as a threat. It was like, oh, that's happening over in China and everywhere else. Like, we don't have to worry about that. And then when people started dying here and it started spreading a little bit closer to home, I think then people started to panic and wanted to take it seriously. But by then it was kind of like too little, too late. And now it's out of control.
Any last comments you'd like to say?
If anyone's panic shopping, please stop doing that. People have kids to feed and they need diapers and wipes. People need toilet paper. Just panic shopping is making it worse. So be kind to people in general. Stop treating us all like lepers. I understand, but you can be 6 feet away and still give a wave. It's okay.
Thank you, Jezreel.
Mm-hmm.